Danny is my name. At the age of 22, this was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I work and live in New York City, and since I don't own a car, I mostly use the train to go around. On a Saturday evening, it was late at night and I was headed home from a party. I was totally cool with riding the subway by myself at night and going down the stairs to reach the underground without seeing another person because I did this roughly every other weekend. It was always a little spooky. As I was walking, I noticed how closely spaced apart these stations were. In addition to the occasional reverberating bang sound coming from somewhere I couldn't quite place, I could almost feel as though I was being watched or followed. I waited on a bench because I was running late for the trains. This seems like something from a horror film. This is exactly what I heard over here, friend. Someone was staring at me from the tracks within the tunnel, sticking his head out. The man appeared to be unclean, possibly in his early 40s. He smiled at me. There was laughter coming from inside the tunnel, and even though I was sitting there, I could tell that this man had a horrible yellow smile with at least 3 missing teeth. I tried not to look at him, but he wouldn't go away. And afterwards, another disgusting-looking man stuck his face out and gave me a nasty smile before telling me to hang out with them in the tunnel. The way they stared at me without even moving their eyes, it's as if their sight was locked onto me. I resumed doing the best I could to ignore them and just wait for the train. I noticed in my peripheral vision that one of the men moved away into the tunnel, returning moments later with another face. I had to look again. There was a third face, but this one was hunched over and lifeless. It looked like one of the men were holding the guy's face up. The sound of the train approaching felt like 1,000 pounds off my shoulders. I got up ready to board the train, but when I got closer to the edge of the platform, I nearly threw up. At the sight, the 2 men were going back into the tunnel. At the second man in the back was holding something in his hand just ahead like a decapitated head. They disappeared from sight onto the side of the tunnel as the train stopped. I got into the first car planning on warning the conductor. But no later than after we left the station. I didn't want to be there a second longer. As the train began to move, I saw legs moving down the stairs to the platform. But that was it. I didn't get to see who it was. But what I did get to see, as the train moved into the tunnels, I caught a glimpse of a group of men hunched up against the railing inches away from the train window, and they were all looking right at me. It seemed to take forever for my stop to arrive, but when it did, I had to practically hop in my walk from relief. I have since attended one party at the same friend's house, but I skipped that station because I felt it was worth it to walk the extra distance to the next station. I knocked on the conductor's door like a madman, screaming that it was an emergency. He opened up and I explained what I had just seen. He radioed to somebody in charge of the station, as well as another higher up of the company. I'm not sure if strange occurs frequently in the train at night, and in my experience before this occurrence, it never did. But in light of this experience, I believe I should advise being very cautious at night when in a remote location like a subway station. When I looked through the glass between the cars, I saw 2 hooded men, or maybe teenagers, standing obnoxiously close to a woman screaming for help. I suggested that we go over and kick their asses, but as my buddy and I got a closer look, we saw they were armed with handguns. I pushed all of my friends to get to the next car, away from the armed men. I then looked back and saw one of the men pointing at us before starting to follow. At that point, we were pretty sober. Separated from my friends, I chose to hide behind a garbage can. I heard my pursuer's shoes hitting the tile floors, so I knew I didn't have time to find a better hiding place. I peered through the opening at the top of the bin. They were both very young and black, and I was certain they were merely trying to rob us. However, I heard one of them say, "If you find them, kill them." I hope you can understand why I nearly gave away my position in response to hearing this from the guest, and nearly pulled the garbage bin down with me as I went back to cover it. I consider it a miracle that neither of them caught me. They left the area without noticing my presence. The big T, the story took a significant turn when we noticed the woman from the train, who we thought was under threat from the two men, approaching them and yelling something like, "Where are they? Don't tell me you didn't get them," the opposite direction of the two, and quickly caught my friends, who were waving me over from behind a large pole. We took cover with them behind another pole, not far from that one, and waited for as long as we thought necessary. Turning a bend, the two males resurfaced and moved toward the woman. We waited for another train to set their trap again, as their remaining words were too faint for us to understand. My dad has been an MTA transit subway station manager for 35 years. Since a manager must be on duty at all times in this line of work, he has essentially worked every shift imaginable over his career, including a good number of night shifts. He claimed that the majority of trains were empty at night, and this was the only positive aspect of working the night shift. He has a number of amusing and unusual stories about working the night shift, but one particularly terrifying one involves a white man who was alone when he boarded the train to go to his office at a different station at around 3 in the morning. The man was described as tall and thin, white, and wearing a heavy jacket and beanie. He gave my dad a quick glance before sitting in the farthest corner from him. My dad claimed to feel uneasy because the man kept staring at him on a regular basis. When the train stopped, he and the other men got off, walked to his office door, unlocked it, and glanced behind him. The man in the jacket was pacing around only about 50 feet away. My dad stepped into his office, shut the door, locked it, and sat at his desk. 5 minutes later, someone started to try and turn the doorknob after the person on the other side of the door realized it was locked. They started to knock softly. My dad called out, "Who is it?" And they responded, "I want to talk." He told whoever it was to go away. He says he knew trouble when he saw it. He had a good feeling. It was the guy from the train, as this station at a time like this was apparently always completely empty. My dad told the guy to go away. He continued to knock for a good 5 minutes. My dad finally pulled up the security camera screens and brought up the camera, pointed to his office door. Sure enough, that was the guy from the train wearing the jacket and beanie. Coincidentally, as soon as my dad brought up the camera, the man walked away. So my dad did whatever his work consisted of. For about half an hour in that office before leaving to catch the next train. He checked the camera to make sure that the weird guy wasn't out there. He locked up and walked down the stairs to the train platform where he got on the train right away. Looking out the window, he saw the guy from before walking down the stairs to the platform and then stepping on the train into the same car as my dad. He sat down on the opposite side, a few seats to the right. My dad tried to look away and pretend not to notice him, but he knew the guy was staring at him. He at one point gave in and stared back, giving a slight nod and smile in some sort of truce attempts. Before looking away again, the man stared at my dad the whole ride to the next station. But my dad never looked back at him once after the first time. Now you may be asking, why didn't he try to forcibly get the guy to back off? Well, despite my dad's intimidating size, he's always been a complete teddy bear. No bark and no bite. Plus he says he feared that guy was armed and that one small motion could lead to death. When the train stopped at the station, my dad practically ran all the way back up to the streets, constantly glancing over his shoulder, and yes, the man from the train was following him. My dad had to find the first public building still open to try and escape. He found a Wendy's that was open, and stepped inside. He sat and watched, as the guy following him walked up to the window, stopped and stared my dad down through the glass for about 10 seconds, before turning around and walking across the street. And then down the sidewalks, my dad said he ate, waited a little longer, then left the Wendy's to get to his third and final station for the night. The scariest part when my dad was in his third office, as he was checking the security cameras out of the paranoia of the situation, he caught the guy from the train pacing around the outside. Only about 30 feet from his office, he then stopped, looked up at the camera, and according to my dad, literally froze and stared. For no less than a minute, when he finally lowered his head, he walked away out of the station to never be seen by my dad again. My dad doesn't know if he was followed after leaving the Wendy's, but that would only make sense. The guy was clearly disturbed, possibly homeless and/or dangerous, and who knows what he actually wanted with my dad. I really hope you like this tale. I am thrilled to share these stories with you. Share this video with others so that we can keep growing and more stories can reach more people. Kindly provide your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. It will aid in my further development. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Many thanks, and I hope to see you again soon.